Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar on reducing contract cheating. My name is Gretchen Hansen. I am a product marketer at Turnitin, and I am thrilled to be working today with Dr. Thomas Lancaster and Dr. Irene Glendenning to talk about this very urgent problem that we are starting to see about contract cheating and some things that we can do to identify the problem and work to solve it. So thank you all so much for joining us today. We're really happy that you were able to take some time. I do want to do just a couple moments of housekeeping before we get started. We are recording today's webinar, so I will be sending that out within one day to everyone who has registered for it. Please feel free to share this recording with your friends and colleagues who might not have been able to make today's presentation. Also, if you have questions, we want this to be an extremely interactive session. So please say hello in the questions area, ask questions. We will be having time set aside for question and answer, for interactivity, and we really want you to participate and to share your experiences. So go ahead and say hello if you'd like. And with that, we're very excited to get started. So let me go ahead and pass it over to Thomas. Thomas, take it away.
Well, hello everyone, and thank you, Gretchen, for that introduction. And thanks to Turnitin as well for hosting us today, and to the International Centre for Academic Integrity for supporting this event. Irene and here are here to talk to you about contract cheating, which has become quite a big problem. I suspect if you're here, you already have an idea what contract cheating is. But from my background, I've been working on this area since I think about maybe 2004, when I started collecting data related to contract cheating. Published the first paper on contract cheating with my colleague Robert Clark. Lots of work on that area since, and Irene says I can't call myself an inventor of contract cheating because that has the wrong connotations to it. Irene, do you want to say hello?
Yes, hello. I'm going to do the second half of the presentation, so I'm handing it back to Thomas shortly, but I'll just say who I am. I work at Coventry University in the UK. I've done a lot of work generally on academic integrity, a lot of research, and that research is continuing, and more I'm concerned about the impact of contract cheating, particularly on the quality and the integrity of our programs in higher education, but also in other levels of education as well. So I'll talk to you later on. I'm going to hand over to Thomas now, and here we go.
Yeah, and Irene and I know each other very well. We used to work at the same university in the past and been on research projects together. So we can probably almost finish what each of us is saying. And hello to everyone. I can see various people posting things in the chat box. Great to have you all here, regardless what part of the world you're from. But really, we're here for awareness raising. We want people to know why we think contract cheating is a problem and why we're concerned that students are the people doing their own work. And we'd like you to take that message back to your institution. If you're a student, to share that with other students. I suspect we have various people here representing the contract cheating industry as well. And of course, we appreciate that there are people out there who are trying to make a living, but from our point of view as educators, we can't award degrees to people who don't deserve them. So we see this as an opportunity for all of us to come together as a sector and to speak out against contract cheating and say that we want integrity in our institutions and in our qualifications. We are here very much to promote the International Day of Action Against Contract Cheating, which takes place on 16th of October. That's going to be the fourth one. We'll say more about that and how you get involved later on. And we do want you to share your ideas as we go through too, because that's why we're here. We have many ideas, but we always hear about brilliant things other institutions are doing, and it doesn't always get shared. We're doing just quickly acknowledge two other talks as well. The first one, excellent talk given by Litza and Trish at the ICA conference this year, looking at the International Day of Action and various facts and figures behind it. The slides for that are available for ICAI members there. or probably you can ask them to get a copy. And we also, Irene and I gave a similar webinar just over a month ago. We've got different slides, different examples today, although we're covering similar areas, but you can of course watch that previous one if you enjoy this one so much you want to find out more. So let's go straight on with it. So contract cheating, what is it? Well, here is a bit of a definition. The exact definitions vary, but for our point of view, we're thinking about a student who is getting somebody else to do their work for them, so particularly their assessments, and they're then trying to get academic credit they don't deserve. There's all kinds of different ways they can get this work done, from using paid firms to asking friends and family to do this, current students, previous students, or graduates there. And the most important part is that student is replacing themselves. And so the person we expect to be doing the work as educators, as academics, as faculty, isn't the right person. So what can we do about it? And these are ideas I cover a lot in different talks and training sessions, but so much about education, which is what we're doing today. It's about putting preventative measures into place, such as thinking about the type of assessments we set. Now, there's no type of assessment that is completely cheating free or that's impossible to cheat on. There's always ways we can make things more difficult. We can try and combine a good assessment strategy designed to help students to learn, something that's pedagogically valid, but also ones that make cheating either more difficult, more expensive, or less valuable to the people who want to take shortcuts. One of my favorite ways is just to vary the types of assessment, so that at the very least a student can't keep going to the same writer again and again and again and asking for work there. It is about encouraging staff to look for signs of contract cheating. There's been some great work, particularly coming out of Australia, but from all around the world in this area, looking at what those signs are. That often when a student uses the big firms of academic writers, then they write their assignments in certain ways. They use a certain type of language. They lay out their text in a certain way. And so looking for things that are amiss and trying to encourage other staff to just question what's handed in and say, could that be the work of a student? And then the area we're focusing in on today is about developing student awareness of the benefits of acting with integrity there. So is this really a problem? And hopefully you all agree it is, because that's why we've got so many of you joining us on the webinar and watching afterwards. But yes, contract cheating is everywhere. And I have so many different examples of this dating back for many years, but everything from the type of flyers we have posted up on lampposts and notice boards. The one on the left there, nursing papers, was one I saw when I was in Toronto last year, among lots of other adverts there, even complete with the tear off strips, so you know how to contact people for help. And you also see in evidence the marketization of different areas, that this particular firm is targeting their adverts on people who want to be nurses there. You see the business cards given out at different universities around the UK and around the world. Things like offering discounts, promoting the work as plagiarism free. Of course, I could argue that anything handed in is completely plagiarism because it's not by the correct student. But they will argue that, well, you won't be found to have submitted work written by somebody else, or I should say where this information is already on the internet. It's not copied from there because it has been written bespokely for you. Now, whether that's true or not is always a question. And then social media. This is just an example from Twitter. Somebody who is quite asking for work, and this person getting lots of responses from firms and writers offering to do this for them, and a lot more which extend way beyond the bottom of that page there. A lot of people say we won't talk about contract cheating because the students don't know about it, but that really isn't the case. Students have heard about it. Whether they're interested in taking up these services or not, the firms are contacting students there. And they're on all the social media sites that students use, not just perhaps the ones that students might say are quite boring ones that we tend to use much more as staff there. And the firms are finding ways to circumvent the measures of integrity that we put into place. So the kind of thing we might say is we want students to learn about academic integrity. So we say something like, watch this video and write about it. It's a typical kind of question that might be asked in some universities. But the response you get back from students, some students, is they just don't care about this. And what do they do then? They move to another service. And this is another one I saw on Twitter just a couple of weeks ago now, where one particular firm posts details of the assignments they're working on and a link to a university that had put up various videos helping students to think about academic integrity there. And of course, these firms have access to these videos just like anyone else. So students can outsource academic integrity assignments just like any other type of assignment. And I've got plenty of requests for ethics assignments, integrity assignments. One of the big SA Mills contracting services in the UK has got a literature review online about plagiarism and cheating, just an example of the work it can do. So these things are taken slightly tongue-in-cheek by the firms as well. They know exactly what's going on. So I think I'll throw this out. Let's get a bit interactive. Why would a student choose to not bother to engage with an assignment and hand it off to a firm like this? So do go ahead and sort of post your ideas in the chat box there. I don't know if I can see them or just Gretchen can see them, but we will work that out in a minute. What do you think drives students to cheat? And while that's going on, yeah, somebody has said, good point, that about the trepidation about mentioning conduct cheating to students in case you give them ideas, then yeah, definitely not something to worry about. Be open with students gets you much further there. So Gretchen, have you got any?
Not yet. I think people are still typing in, so we'll give them just a moment longer to keep articulating their ideas.
Yeah, brilliant. And I can say we could probably come up with 100 reasons between ourselves, but just see what kind of themes occur.
Okay, lots of ideas coming in here now. Self-confidence, they don't think they will get caught, lack of time management, time pressures, they don't feel they have enough time to get everything done, pressure to succeed, new types of assessments and overwhelming, poor English skills, students that don't have the support he or she needs to be successful. They don't believe they can do a good enough job to earn the grade they desire. Time constraints, lazy, not confident, don't care about their work. Lots and lots of things, desperation and fear of failure, procrastination and poor prioritization. Yeah, look, lots of, they don't understand the assignment.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I mean, I think I heard several repeated themes in there. Time management came up a lot. Here's a far from complete list that Simon and I have put on the slide here. But certainly time and support. So it could be due to poor time management. It could be due to conflicting priorities in their life. But there was one thing I really liked that was mentioned in there, which is that the students are getting types of assignments they don't know how to approach. And so sometimes we can also be guilty of thinking, oh, we've got a really great idea for an assignment, but a student doesn't know how to go ahead and complete this particular type of assignment. And one of these that has been mentioned quite a lot in the literature recently has been authentic assessment, that on paper it's really great getting students to do something like they would in the real world or like they would in an employment situation. But a student is used to doing a very traditional written assignment. They don't know how to get started unless we really guide them through these alternatives there. And a lot of this comes to a trade-off between time and money. What's better for the student? It can be incredibly cheap to pay someone else to do this for them. I see various other ones flashing through in the question box as well. Their students may not have an academic integrity background. Quite true. We can't assume students know about this. Likewise, we can't assume they know how to write or they know how to reference. They're quite often, everyone assumes somebody else is teaching this stuff, but nobody actually does. We've also got as well sort of poor planning from the point of view of staff, in that lots of high stakes assignments are due at the same time. Very much a problem as well. So there's things that we can do straight away to protect students about that in the first place. But I will also throw in that they are sold by the marketing, because some of this marketing is very heavy, and some of the marketing can be designed now to not look like marketing. And so particularly if it's trying to exploit international students, then they can get taken in by firms as well. Firms that are trying to present themselves saying, well, we're just your friend, and thinking nothing more about this. So we're really here because we don't want to see contract cheating, but because we want to protect students. So students get exploited all the time by these firms. They might think they're going to be buying brilliant work, getting a brilliant degree, and they end up failing, or they end up being having to leave their university because they get caught, or because they've run out of opportunities to retake their. And the cost of taking a year of a course can be quite expensive. I know it varies from country to country, but just the living costs alone have got to have something to do with that there. And because we really want to protect the value of student qualifications as well, to protect the value of all the honest students who are the ones who are doing their own work there. We have to remember it's quite a small minority of students who are cheating, but that's enough to put everyone else at risk. And also, we know that this is a deceptive and global industry there. Whether individual writers are honest is one question, but there are whole firms exploiting students by trying to convince them to cheat and not positioning themselves as doing so. And I hear about new tactics the firms are using all the time, some of them incredibly deceptive. But there's tactics like making themselves seem cool by hiring brand ambassadors to go to campuses, to get students drinking, and to get them to associate that type of activity. Firms say they are the support service, completely ignoring the fact that universities are already offering support to students there, and they use that word quite widely there. We've heard of firms developing classroom moles, particularly for online courses, where one person on the course is employed by the essay firm to get things like student email addresses, or to find out information about what the students need, about what their challenges are there. They get all over social media, whether they engage students through Facebook chat, or they friend them on Instagram, or they get them on Snapchat, whatever it might be. So there's lots of tactics, the same tactics perhaps legitimate businesses would use in some cases, but they're trying to get there past students. And just reading the question that's come in, if it's accepted to outsource activities in business and HE is commodified, why can't students outsource tasks as well? Well, I mean, it's an interesting question, because I do think we should be teaching elements of outsourcing, particularly on business courses, and particularly looking at how students manage their future activities. But as education, we are validating that students themselves have the ability to complete a particular task. So for instance, I'm a computer scientist. If I'm teaching computer programming, I need to know that that particular student can program, because that's what's expected by the employers that we work with there. Now, it may be that at a later date, they go into a management position, or they hire freelance workers for themselves. That's absolutely fine. That's part of business, but we're still giving them the skills so they recognize whether they're getting high quality work or bad work back at the end of that process. But we have to make sure the person getting the qualification is the correct one. There may well be a place for some future degree qualifications where the target is to manage a process or manage a company successfully there. But at the same time, we can't disadvantage the students who don't have the money to go ahead and outsource for themselves either. So all kinds of tricky ethical dilemmas, which you can use to engage students in these type of discussions there. But unfortunately, from education, or fortunately, depending how you look at it, we need to verify the particular student and what they've done. And so really, we're looking at an opportunity to unify our staff, our faculty, our students, our professional services, administrative staff, our student unions, get everyone working towards the same page. And all the people who work in the student support industry providing completely legitimate services, such as proofreaders signed up to a code of conduct and who are helping students, but they're not going ahead and rewriting work for them. So that's why we're really keen to promote these opportunities to discuss things to you. And at this point, I'm going to hand over to Irene, who wants to say a bit about institutional policies.
Yes, hello everyone, and great to see so many of you here. We're up to 109 attendees now, and welcome wherever you are from different parts of the world. So to pick on several things that Thomas has already said and just add a few things to it before I go on, largely focusing on policies to begin with. The idea that a student could legitimately outsource their work simply because we teach them about outsourcing industries is, in my view, preposterous. If you think that is a good argument, then you clearly don't understand what assessment's for. Assessment isn't just to measure a student's learning, but it's also a learning experience in itself. And if a good piece of assessment is an opportunity for the students to develop their skills and develop their knowledge, and if they get someone else to do that, then they're not going to be able to do the next piece of work or the one after that, because they're building on that work and they're gradually improving their knowledge. So we don't set assessment just to punish students or just to give them something to do. It's a very, very important part of the learning process. And so if students don't get involved in that, in the assessment process, then they miss out on a very, very key part of the learning experience. So I just thought I'd say that to begin with. So what I want you to think about now is to start to think about the International Day of Action, or days of action if you want to spread your activities across more than one day, or even more than 1 week if you want to do. It's not just an event for students, although we're going to talk about the things you can do with students and hopefully get some of these events, some of these activities student-led. It's also a good opportunity to talk about your institutional policies and to raise the issue of contract cheating with the whole community, with the whole institutional community, and even across institutions if you have nearby institutions that you work closely with. It's not just about students, it's about faculty, academics. So let's just look at some of the questions. How well do your academic staff, your faculty, how well do they understand what contract cheating is? Do they understand how ubiquitous it is? In other words, it's everywhere, it's global, it's at every level of education, and it is affecting the quality of our education. So it's a really, really important issue. If academics don't understand it, if the management of your institution, if the leaders within your institution don't understand it, then you're not going to get support for dealing with it. So it's a good opportunity to just have that conversation with colleagues and with the management in the institution. Ask yourself, are your policies working? How well are they working? Are they actually specifically addressing contract cheating and all the causes and all the ways that that this problem can manifest itself? Are you effectively, do you have policies for deterring cheating? Perhaps that might be involved in education, in how the work's set. And that's a conversation to be had with all the community, not just the students or not just the staff. So it's a good opportunity to do all of those things. What more can you do in your institution? There's always something else you can do. And how do you know your policies are working well? We also get asked whether or not this problem affects all types of institutions. Some institutions think they don't have this problem. Well, I can assure you, if you haven't found this problem yet in your institution, then the chances are it's there, that you just haven't been looking in the right place, because it affects everywhere. The students are bombarded, as Thomas was saying earlier, the students are bombarded with adverts from these companies. And I had an email that I was asked to respond to by our provost couple of days ago, can you reply to this student? The student was fed up of getting bombarded by social media, through email, through every channel that's available, requests or invitations, if you want to put it that way, from these companies, offers to do the work for them. And that was just one student, but I'm sure some students think that these services are legitimate services offered by the university, because that's the way they're often presented to them. So I think we have to bear in mind what the students are going through, and we need to try and find ways to address those issues. So policies are a good focus. And I think that's one of the things you should use this day of action or this time of year to focus on. Move on to the next slide, please. So the other thing we want you to do, we want you to clearly take part in the International Day of Action or this time of year. But we want you to tell us about your ideas, your successes and your failures. What's working for you? Have you got something that's particularly useful that other people might benefit from? So tell us now if you want. So start typing your ideas in now. What is working for you? What have you tried and it's not working? Any ideas why that might be? So successes and failures is really important. So that's not just for the webinar, that's for the actual day of action. Share those with other people. You can share them through social media. You can share them. I think we're going to try and get a forum on the International Day of Action website. I'm not sure whether we've managed to do that. If we do, then we can share that with you. Perhaps Gretchen can pick up on that point. So here we have a wonderful poster here that was created for us by the University of Wollongong, some students there in Dubai, which is available for you to use if you wish. So that kind of sets out the 4th International Day of Action against contract cheating. We chose this time of year and this specific day when we had the first Day of Action 4 years ago, because it was set as a global Day of Ethics by the Carnegie Foundation, I believe it was. And we talked to them about it at the time, and they agreed that they were happy for us to use their Global Day of Ethics. If you don't like the idea of an International Day of Action on contract cheating, internally you can call your activities the Day of Ethics, because it's the same. It's the same day. So if you want to spin it positively, then that's absolutely fine. It's no problem. But sign up with us anyway. Sign up with the International Day of Action so that we know that you're active, and get your positive messages out there. So I think that's so we're celebrating integrity as well as trying to find ways of combating contract cheating. So the two things work together, and you can spin it whichever way works best for you and your institution. I think that's absolutely fine. Next slide, please. So here are the previous days of action. We started off in 2016, and it was an idea that came out of the Vancouver conference earlier that year, which I was at, the ICAI conference there. And a group of us met up during the conference and decided we needed to do something about contract cheating. We were very concerned about it. And this idea for a day of action came from one of the participants. And so we had the first International Day of Action. 22 institutions signed up the first year. I think more people were active than that, but only 22 signed up. In 2017, there were 75 institutions, quite a significant rise, signed up. And so that was accelerating, really building on that. Last year, there were 88 institutions signed up. And once again, I'm sure there were more institutions around the world that were active. And this year, let's aim for something over 100. So hopefully more people will sign up. So if you haven't signed up yet, I hope you will sign your institution up, or sign up your department or your faculty up. It doesn't have to be the whole institution. Get yourself signed up so that we know you're active. By showing that you're standing together with the global community for higher education, or education in general, if you're not a higher education institution, then it actually demonstrates that you're committed to fighting this terrible threat. And one of the questions we were asked, I think one of the things that came out earlier on, is if some institutions said they didn't want to sign their institutions up because that showed that they might have a problem. And I have to say, everyone has the problem, whether or not you admit it or not. If you assess students, it's likely that some students will feel tempted to use these services. If they're not using the essay mills, it's likely they're using friends and family to help them to cheat. So by signing up, it shows that you're committed to fighting it, not that you're afraid of being part of the community. So if you, as I said before, if you don't think you've got the problem, then you're not looking hard enough for it. So sign up if you haven't done so already, is the message from that slide. So what does it mean if you sign up? What have you got to do? Well, it's useful if you can get a budget. So if you can get some money together and you've got a little bit of time left to do that. But if you haven't got a budget, don't worry, there are lots of other things you can do, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. So you need to talk to your colleagues in the institution and try and get some support for the event. You can't run the event on your own unless you do it on a very small scale. You need to generate publicity, and that could be publicity internally, or you can talk to your local media press about what you're doing and raise the publicity wider than that. Talk to other institutions that you're in communication with and try and get them to organise something as well. You could have joint events between your institutions. You can join together with international activities on the day itself and leading up to it through all the social media activities that are going on. So you don't have to wait until the day of action, you can start straight away if you want to do. And basically we're hoping that the whole of the international community are interested in this problem, we're interested in trying to fight this problem, will join together and make a very loud noise that will hopefully raise the awareness of the problem to students and colleagues, make it clear why this issue is a problem to the quality and the standards that we have in our institutions, and hopefully we'll find ways of reducing the demand for these services, because at the moment we know there is an absolutely huge demand. The supply wouldn't exist if the demand wasn't there. Okay. So thank you, Thomas, for putting together this really beautiful slide. One of the things you can do that doesn't cost any money is you can ask students to make a pledge, and you can ask the staff within the institution, academics and other staff within the institution, to make a pledge about their commitment to academic integrity. You can use the two hashtags, defeat the cheat and excel with integrity. If you want the positive one, there's a positive one and a negative one. You can use both or whichever one you prefer. So this is a very easy way, and we've got some examples of these from previous years. You can share these on social media. Here we are. So this one is from Athens, from Derry, and there we have some students who are sharing their pledges. I don't need anyone to prove my worth, says one of the young ladies, and I can do it on my own. So that's really. So we've got quite a few things from Derry coming up. So let's have a look at a few more of these pictures as they've put together. Here, this chap says you can fool the world, but you can't fool God. And there behind him are lots and lots of things going on, lots of other pledges that you can just about read in the background. So really, that's from DuPage in USA. I hope I pronounced that right. Next one. So here we have a little collage. So we've got the American University of Nigeria, and the young lady there writing out her pledge. And just the act of doing this is great fun, to get students to think about what academic integrity means to them and why they don't cheat. Seneca College of Applied Arts in Canada, and then we've got Australia, and we've got another USA college there, and the chap laying there, look really laid back, be original. I don't contradict because I'm original, I guess. So lots of stuff going on there. So just doing that doesn't cost any money, and you can see in the background there, there's a whiteboard there with lots of things written on it. So that's the other thing, get people to write things on a whiteboard. I think we've got some more examples coming up of that in a minute. Let's have a look at the next one. But this is my own institution, Coventry in the UK. And I'm hiding behind the hair. I don't know whether you can see me. I'm kind of in the background between the two sets of balloons. So we have our Students' Union. And the nice thing about this is it demonstrates, we actually borrowed an idea from Deakin University, with their permission, of course. So you can see a little spinning wheel in the background. That's a little game. Lots of giveaways, lots of chocolate, students like chocolate. But we were part of a careers fair that day in our Students' Union, and it was led and organised by the Students' Union. We were there to help with the Centre of Academic Writing was talking about writing. A lot of students came up to our stand and asked my colleague Eric, who's on the left there, asked him about academic writing, about what kind of services they had there. So it was a really useful day. And the Students' Union were giving lots of presents away. And you see the brown things in the foreground there, those were bricks. So we actually built a brick wall of integrity. So the students were asked to write their own message about what integrity meant to them on the brick. And then we built a whole wall that was just stuck to a glass partition. And that was quite fun. So again, these things cost very little money. And it's easy to do. And it gets students involved and it gets the message out there. It's surprising how many students came up and said, oh, do you mean this kind of thing? And showed us a business card or something of that kind, or a leaflet that was, or showed us a message on their phone and said, do you mean these kind of messages? Is that what it's about? So it opens a conversation and it gets the message out there that students shouldn't be doing it. Okay, next slide. So here we have, and I was talking about Deakin University, and this is their event. And I think Thomas was saying that this was a few weeks ago, and we were asked a question at the last the webinar we did in August, why we don't have an event for the Southern Hemisphere in the spring, and I think we're going to look into that perhaps for 2020, and because the timing is much better for the Southern Hemisphere if it's in sort of March time. So perhaps we'll talk to our Antipodean colleagues about that. But lots of things here, lots of giveaways, lots of games, lots of exciting things that will attract students, and then you can have interesting conversations with them about why this is very important. Okay, next slide then. So here's an example of a game. With a spinning wheel. So we've seen quite a lot of these. So that's a Canadian one, and there's also Staffordshire University there on the left side. And Thomas, do you want to come in and say, do you know what that one was? What the ball was?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, so there's a little game with the ball where the students sort of spun the ball and were asked ethical questions relating to contract cheating. But the reason I put this one in, this is a university I worked at for a while, so I was involved in this particular event there, but really because it was very student union driven, and quite a lot of institutions have had the student unions really leading their events rather than the staff, because that really helps with that engagement.
Yeah, I agree with
but also
that.
Because, yeah. And the other comment is also because we did quite well getting media attention for that one. So we've got a radio station in there interviewing some of the people involved, and so we managed to get this on the air. So all that publicity really helps to spread the message as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. But there might be some fears about getting the press involved, and we're very lucky in the UK that we have some fairly interested journalists who understand the problem, and they understand how hard the problem is to solve, and they don't condemn institutions who admit that they've got this problem, because everyone has it. So and they're helping us by highlighting to students and trying to raise awareness on the issue. Okay, next one. I can't remember what comes next. Oh, here's another game. Yeah, that's very good. So that looks like almost like a kind of Monopoly game, isn't it? So that's at GSM College in London, which unfortunately has just closed, which is a shame. But they were doing some really good stuff on contract cheating to try and combat the problems there. So yeah, so lots and lots of different games. Just make it fun, make it interesting. Not only will you get students interested in getting involved, but you'll also get academic staff and other staff in the institution involved. Now here's a huge whiteboard or white wall where people are just writing on their thoughts on here. So and that's something that can persist long after the event, so people can come along and have a look at that. You can use it again and again. So that is in Oman. So it's great that we've got lots of different countries involved here. So, and there's another one on the right side there. Don't do it. Sign the pledge, and lots of people signing to say they're not going to cheat. That's really good. Okay, now this one is interesting. This is again from Greece, from Athens, Derry, and that is a fingerprint in the middle. Isn't that fun? And then again, lots of different pledges and lots of different statements from people about why they don't cheat. Like I'll just read a couple out to you. Authenticity is vital on the road to your academic endeavour, and I have respect for knowledge is another one. So it's great to get students to think about that, and staff as well. So that's lots of ideas there for you to use yourself, and certainly people are happy to share these ideas because they want you to go on and use them. But clearly, it would be useful if you can acknowledge where the ideas have come from if you use them. Right, next slide. So this is something that we did in my institution. This is one side of a credit card size handout. And we actually did the first ones we did in plastic. The second ones came back in quite solid card, and they were a little bit cheaper, and they're just as good. On one side we had contract cheating, and you could see they're all contact details there for, and we had the defeat the cheat hashtag. And on the other side, which you can't see, we had all information about academic integrity, and we had the positive hashtag, which was Excel with Integrity, again with all the contact details there. So this is very similar to some of the cards that the contract cheating companies hand out to students, but this is one with a positive message for students. Don't cheat, and this is what we mean by integrity. And I've just point out the card that Thomas showed you earlier from, I think it was from Ivory. It had on the reverse side, it had a discount code with a specific discount code for a certain institution. We get them exactly the same, but without a discount code for Coventry on the back of them. So these people come onto our campus and they hand these cards out to students, and the students think these are genuine advisory services. But this is our own response to that. So you can do something very similar to that and put some signposting on it where students can go and get some help. Okay, next slide then. So here's another one, little slips of paper with the hashtags on, and that was from Derry again. Some nice ideas from there. And then from University of San Diego, California, again we've got a, don't know whether is that their mascot, anyway, a dog, and Excel with Integrity, and lots of things in the background to do with integrity. So I hope you're getting lots of really good ideas here about what you can do. These things don't cost a lot of money. They don't necessarily cost anything. If you can get a budget, you can do all sorts of stuff. But if you haven't got a budget, you can still do lots of really interesting stuff. So next one, please. Right then, so what kind of obstacles? And I'll ask Thomas to come back in here and we'll both talk together on the next two slides, hopefully not both at the same time. But so there are lots of things that Litsa from Derek and Tricia came up with at that conference that Thomas attended earlier in the year, which I didn't see, but I can sympathise with some of these obstacles. So there may be reasons why you think you can't do an International Day of Action. Maybe you can't get support for it. And there are always ways around all these obstacles. So Thomas and I will just talk you through some of those ideas now.
Yeah, and what Litsa and Tricia did, they did a survey of the institutions that had been taking part in International Day of Action and the people who weren't taking part or had stopped, and found out what the reasons were they gave. So these are nearly all those reasons, but you don't need to use these as obstacles. You can get around them. And I mean, this is the only one which isn't from Litsa and Trisha's list. Just in the audience are saying about that being Trisha's dog. Anyway, there you go, nice bit of amusement in the background. But the first one is, if you can't do it on the 16th of October, then it doesn't matter, because we know institutions, individual courses have got activities on in those days. We're actually saying these activities can take place at any point during the whole week. And it's ideally slightly better. Yeah, I mean, or any time at all is good for raising integrity, but the more that can happen on the 16th of October, the better, because it helps to generate that critical mass and that noise to get the hashtags on Twitter really going through the roof as well. So I'm really going for that 16th of October, but that covers quite a long time period from when the first institutions wake up through more than 24 hours to when the final institutions go to bed for the night. So we've got quite a long time period you can overlap with quite easily for that. So don't let that be a barrier.
You can watch the events unfolding during the day while you're awake. From first thing in the morning, New Zealand comes online, and then it moves, and then the last institutions. I think we had Fiji last time, didn't we? But anyway, it was certainly California, one of the last places to be active during the day, and all the way through the day, lots of things going on. So try and be part of that. It's great fun, and let your students be part of that, and they can see themselves as part of this global community, and a global community that's committed to integrity, which is really, really important.
Now, another problem, then, a lot of people have mentioned that these events do cost money to put on, but it depends entirely, I suppose, how much you want to invest, whether you can get support from your university or from the student societies for this there. But there are lots of very cheap activities. We've just really thrown out ideas throughout this webinar of the different types of activities other universities have used. A lot of them are very cheap. Things like the game is downloadable. I think it's still online on the GSM website for the time being. You can print out your own. We've had students design their own games as part of classroom activities. Again, they only need to be paper-based and quite simple. If you can't get activities going on campus, for instance, last year, I gave a webinar which was broadcast live to the University of Calgary to sort of kick off their day. And there are plenty of people involved with academic integrity and contract cheating who I'm sure would be quite happy to help, even if it's just a short 15-minute webinar or a 30-minute webinar or a bit of a discussion, just to try and get that local, try and get that international community together. But you don't have to worry about people are physically there anymore, as you can tell by the fact you're joining us on this webinar today. We have a student competition going on. Well, the International Centre for Academic Integrity, I should say, have a student competition going on as well that people can take part in from anywhere around the world. I mean, Irene, you might want to say a little bit more about that one.
Yeah, the competition is to design a poster, and all the details are on the website. Anyone can enter. It's aimed at students to design, and it can be a team or it can be an individual. And I've forgotten what the deadline is, but go on the website and check that out, and get some entries in. And there's some cash prizes there, so it's worth entering. There is some money available for the best entries. And the idea is that hopefully you'll be able to design a poster that we can use in subsequent years, and resources that we can share with you. So that's quite fun. So if you're interested in doing that, go on the website and get the details there. So yes, so if you have difficulty getting people motivated and getting people signed up to help you, you can start small. So have a small event, have it local to you, and preferably get students involved in it. So get students working with you, and then you can grow in subsequent years. One of the things we've got our students to do is to design a video, and that video is then available for other years, for other times to use. So if you can get students to work on resources that you can then reuse. That's particularly useful. There was one class within our institution a few years ago that had a poster competition actually in the class on that day, which was quite fun. Another one where we had people actually, people from the Students' Union, our sabbatical officers, were going into classes and talking to students during the day, and talking to students about whether they understood what it was, and that was quite effective as well. Again, it doesn't cost a lot, and that can be quite useful. Particularly students talking to students about the problem can be really useful.
Yeah, and I guess that overlaps really with what you do if you don't have the human resources to run this event. But I've seen a huge amount of success, as I said earlier, about student unions leading on these activities, or even individual student societies who are running some of those events as well. So it doesn't have to necessarily be a large group of staff being involved from that one as well for that. And I guess this is quite a big problem as well, that not everyone can speak on behalf of their institution and to sign a whole institution up to take part. Well, that's fine. I mean, of course, work on it and try and get people to discuss this. But really, you can get people involved on a personal level. Students can still go and pledge for themselves. They can still go and engage with the hashtags. These hashtags were ones that a student focus group came up with, so the ones that resonated for the students too. So you can sort of get people involved without it being an institutional push, but obviously it's better if you can encourage your institution to sign up. Some people will go ahead and do that anyway. Some institutions will be less keen depending on your position there, but really every institution should want to take part in a day like this. And
yes. I'm just looking at one of the questions there. I suggest when we're going to finish shortly. There's a question there saying that they were hoping we were going to talk more about what can be done to stop contract cheating. So we might actually move to that in a minute. So that's one of the questions. What can be done to stop contract cheating? Any thoughts on that, Thomas, to start with, and then I'll pick up on that too.
Well, I mean, I've done sort of whole day events talking about how to address contract cheating and what we can do about it. Unfortunately, for this particular event, we were asked to focus in on the International Day of Action there, but by all means, get me at another time to do that. If you look on my SlideShare archive, there's lots of slides going through different activities. But for me, key to this is about thinking about the type of assessments we set for students. I can say that contract cheating providers want run-of-the-mill assessments that they can turn out with the minimum of effort, that it's a standard, say, first-year business assignment where they know the relevant sources and they can just regurgitate the same stuff they have already. They don't want the more obscure type of assignments, the ones that require high levels of critical thinking there. Or if they do want them, they charge students more, and so students find it harder to find somebody suitable to write that. Personally, I think you need a good mix of different types of assessments. I do think you need a certain amount of supervised in-class assessment, whether that's a traditional exam, whether that's a test, whether it's a practical test taken on a computer, whether it's getting students to complete a practical activity, whether it's giving them a Viva exam, asking them questions. So nothing that's so obscure that they don't know how to approach it there, but the kind of thing that means that if a student does manage to outsource part of their course, they can't outsource the whole thing. To me, it is very much about having these discussions with students as well to go along with that, and the discussions with staff. I mean, I can roll off ideas, but I mean, Irene, I know you want to come in.
Well, I was just agreeing with you on that point. It's not about punishing students, although you have to have strong policies and you have to be seen to be using them. So as long as students know that other students are getting away with doing this with impunity, they're not being caught, they're not being punished for it, other students will continue to do it because they'll feel disadvantaged compared to the students that are getting away with it. So it's important that you have the strong policies and carry them out and enforce them consistently, and that you're very transparent about the fact you're doing those. but more importantly, that you work with students about the integrity side, and you persuade students, talk to students about the reason for assessing them, so that they understand more about assessing isn't just about passing exams so that you can get the qualification. It's part of the learning process. So it's not easy. Otherwise, we wouldn't have contract cheating. We would have solved it ages ago. So it's not there aren't any. There's no silver bullet. It's a difficult problem, and there are no straightforward answers. And it's harder in some countries than it is in others, because if you have a culture of corruption within that country, and I know that happens in quite a few countries, students see it as a normal part of the way they work. So, but it happens in all countries. It's not just developing countries that it happens in. So, but the other thing we're working on, and not everyone agrees, but I personally think there is a place for legislation in this. And if enough countries bring legislation, work on the legislation and enact that legislation, we have a strong argument to have with students that you must not use these services because they are illegal. And to advertising companies, you must not advertise, you must not market these companies because they are illegal. So there are lots of things like that we should be doing at different levels. That the important thing is we are now aware of the problem. We're talking about it more. It's not hidden, and it's important that we all get our ideas together and we share our thoughts when we find that things do work.
Yeah, and a huge amount of this is about staff development as well. So not all institutions have staff development sessions about contract cheating yet. And clearly by being here today, you're interested and engaged in the problem. So try and get those sessions running together. They can be discussion based. There can be people sharing ideas about what works locally. And one thing that's really stood out to me over the last year or so working in this area is that every discipline is different. So some things that work really well for computing, which is my area, don't translate so well towards business or towards history or whatever another subject might be. So it's also trying to develop those subject discipline-based groups as well to try and work out what the best initiatives are to deter contract cheating in your area. But do talk about it. I know Irene says people are talking about contract cheating, they are, but I still go to events and speak and have people come up to me and say, we had no idea this was a problem, or we've not heard about contract cheating or this behavior before, or that our students wouldn't do it. And unfortunately, I always want to think the best of every student. I want to help every student to do well, but there will be some students who, for whatever reasons, whatever the pressure may be, end up going to firms and using their services. And if they do it once, they get away with it, they hear about their friends getting away with it, then they're tempted to do it again because it's had results for them. So it is about having those discussions, and it is about trying to deter it from very early on in a student's course before they get a chance to establish these unhelpful behaviors, and while they're still able to learn everything, because there's no way they can go and do their second year modules if they've completely bypassed the first year modules and the second year modules build upon them there.
Thomas,
Okay.
We had one question come in before we wrap up quickly about where to get statistics about contract cheating around the world. I don't know if you have any good resources to point people to.
I mean, I think there are statistics out there. There have been some papers pulling information together, one from Phil Newton there, but one problem is people collect their statistics in different ways, so they're not directly comparable. They ask slightly different questions which change the overall results there. I mean, the UK, for instance, the media often send out Freedom of Information Act requests to UK universities and ask them, how many plagiarism cases have you had? How many exam cheating cases have you had? How many contract cheating cases have you had? And they collect together that information and they put together league tables of different universities, which aren't always helpful because they show some universities that have a lot of contract cheating, which then the media will say, well, that place must be really bad, when my argument would always be, well, that place must be doing really well because they're taking action, they're trying to stop it. So there are a few sources out there, but nothing consistent, a lot of information that relies on student surveys. So all I can say is it is a problem everywhere. It does appear that there are some places where students are more open about speaking about this, or they're less fearful of the repercussions, or they think it's more endemic to their culture, which are the sort of wider issues of corruption that Irene was talking about. But I can't say of any sort of a one-stop shop for that. Irene?
You may, the question may have been about statistics on the number of contract cheating companies and that kind of thing, rather than the number of students. We don't know how many students we're not catching. That's a big problem. We can say how many students, every institution could potentially count the number of students they find to have contract cheated, but we don't know how many we're not catching, and we never will do. But if we get better at catching it, and the new tools from Turnitin may help with that, and there are other vendors out there that are developing tools, that might help us to be able to get the evidence together to be able to convict students, and that in itself will act as a larger deterrent than we have at the moment.
Yeah, and there's not one single solution. It's all these measures being taken together. But I mean, also Irene mentioned the number of firms out there. I think we probably have to finish soon. But there's another challenge are that the firms will advertise under lots of different names. They'll advertise under different country URLs, different website addresses. They'll often make it seem like they're different firms to appeal to different sectors of students. But quite often it's the same writers at the end. So it's an international problem. It doesn't matter where a firm or writer is based, they can sell their services. If they write in English, they can sell them to anyone who wants to buy services in English. And there are similar markets operating in other languages.
In
so
other
it's
languages,
not something, yeah, exactly. So
do you want to put the last slide on? Yeah, so the message that we want to get to you is please sign up if you can. You don't have to sign up your whole institution if that's hard, but it's great if you do that. And we'll see you on the International Day of Action, hopefully. But if you please use the hashtags in the meantime to communicate. And I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's signed up and listened and took part. I'd like to say thank you to Turnitin for hosting both the webinars that we've run. I forgot to say that last time. Thank you very much indeed. It's really made our lives a lot easier because you've done that for us. And thank you my co-presenter Thomas for a very excellent talk.
Yes, thank you, Irene, and we will leave you this picture with what may or may not be Litz's dog to go along with Trisha's dog from earlier on. But yes, your mascot for the International Day of Action really helps. But thanks to everyone involved. Thank you to Irene, and I'm sure I speak for Irene as well. Do contact us if we can help with this.
Very happy
yeah. With this challenge and clue you in on any of different areas of what I'm sure you can gather we could easily talk all day about. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you for joining, everyone. Thank you, Thomas. Thank you, Irene. And we'll be looking for your email with the link to this recording to share with your friends and colleagues. Appreciate you joining us, and we'll see you next time. All the best. Bye-bye.
Bye.